From Hollywood blockbusters like Legally Blonde and sensationalized cases like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's 2022 defamation case, or for our older audience, perhaps the O.J. Simpson murder trial, these were major moments that have catapulted the legal industry into the pop culture world.
Hi, I'm Reese Jensen.
And I'm Ashley Humphries.
Welcome to Hearsay Anyway, a podcast that aims to simplify legalese, share the inside scoop on a legal career, and dive into all your legal questions.
Today, we're diving into our backgrounds and sharing exactly how we got into the practice of law, from applying to law school to getting through the first year to becoming clerks. Grab a coffee and let's get into it.
Hey, I'm Irina Jensen, office manager and producer of this episode, and I'll be asking today's questions. Why did you choose law school?
Ashley, I'll let you go first.
Thanks, Reese. I decided to go to law school for several different reasons. The biggest one is definitely the influence of my dad. He's a lawyer, and I got to work at his firm a little bit in high school, and I really loved it there. And I liked that I got to do sort of substantive things at a young age. It was really exciting. Then I went to college, and really my passion is writing. I love to write, but I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. So law school was kind of the logical path with those two things, and that's sort of why I decided to go into it.
I would say my path was a little bit different. I wasn't surrounded by lawyers themselves, but I did have a favorite movie growing up, and that was Legally Blonde. So I guess that was the first spark of passion. I think that I was told my whole life I was argumentative. Just so many people telling me, geez, you ought to be a lawyer. It kind of flowed naturally for me, but I think that going through college and realizing that law school was an option for me and seeing the application process, that was going to be something I could do, really opened up the possibility for me.
I think that's such a common experience that particularly young girls have, is being like, oh, you're difficult, argumentative, whatever you want to label it.
That's true.
You should become a lawyer.
Yeah.
I've had that happen too.
It's funny that when you're a girl and you are argumentative, it's immediately, you need to go into law. You need to be a lawyer. Right. But did you experience the same thing with Legally Blonde? Was that a bit of a spark, or was that not really in your path?
I did love Legally Blonde.
Okay, so we both had that. I think that's a common theme, actually. And I think that's one of the reasons that movie is so great for the legal field, that it has sparked kind of so many women to go into law. I heard now that I think in our law school at CU that there's more women in our
I think it's across the country right now, in all higher education fields, but definitely in law school. There's more women in law school now than there are men.
Which is an interesting trend, and I think we've seen it too, just in our experience that we both work at the same firm. And coming into that, we've had more women kind of joining the firm, and that's been interesting to see how the changes happen.
What was the application process like?
The application process for me was actually pretty smooth, but I had a lot of resources I know a lot of people don't have. In my university, I was actually part of a class that helped you apply to graduate programs, and it was really cool because I had a professor who was helping us navigate that. I, had to write the personal statement, get all of my transcripts in order, get the recommendations from professors, all of that, and then apply. And then I studied for the LSAT over the summer. And I actually took the LSAT twice. One time I was really, I felt good about it. I did it when I was well rested. I did all the things you're supposed to do before you take a major test. And I got a really bad score. And I was like, no. So I decided to take it again just to see what happened. And that time I was like, well, I've already taken it. I'm probably not going to do as well. So I took it when I was sleep deprived, and it was the end of the day, and I did everything wrong. And I did way better than I had been testing before. So that was a fun surprise. Now when people ask me, what are your tips for studying for the LSAT? And I'm like, just
deprive yourself of sleep.
Exactly. Good ones.
That's so cool. I did not know actually any of that about you, that you had the class. That's amazing. I feel like for me, it was more lucky in the sense that my dad figured out a lot of stuff for me. And I remember him kind of creating even a guide to application for me, which was a good push that I needed, because there's so much content out there. It can be kind of confusing. What do you do? What do you study with? What do you sign up for? There's 10 million things that you could sign up for to study for the test. So I think it was just all over the place. But eventually I kind of got the hang of applications after I did a few. And then after that, I feel like it was like clockwork, and I actually ended up applying to a lot more than I thought. But with the LSAT, I also studied over the summer, so I bet we were studying at the same time.
Probably were.
I think it was very interesting in terms of most tests. In my life, I've never studied that hard for a test. Just the amount of hours was a lot. So I was like going to the pool, and I would bring my computer and I would just sit there and study. And I got so tan that summer. And that was just all my studying, all my skin. But when I did take the test, it was very strange because it was online. I don't know if yours was virtual.
Same.
Yeah. And so that was a bit difficult. I even had the proctor interrupt me in the middle of my exam.
Oh.
To tell me that he couldn't see my eyes or something, but I had to like hold my head up a little bit during the test. It was during logic games, and I was stressed. In terms of the test, I just kind of went with a study path and just went full bore with that path, and eventually it ended up all right. But I think that experience is like not necessarily so uncommon, where you take it the first time and you're like, whoa, what happened? And then you take it the second and you're like, oh, that's the test. Like, you figured it out.
Also, you mentioned logic games, and I wanted to ask you because that was my favorite section, and they took it off. It's not there anymore.
That was my favorite. Okay. I also feel like maybe that I wouldn't want to be in a year where we didn't have logic games, because it was such a section that you could improve on.
Yes.
Reading comprehension, there's only so much you can do to improve.
Logical reasoning, I studied so hard for that. I did not improve at all. I don't know how many hours I put into that. My score stayed the same.
Those two are really tough, and so I feel like maybe that actually, I think people say, oh, well, the test has gotten easier. I think it's gotten harder. I think it's gotten way harder. But that was a weird section to study for.
Yeah.
It's like learning a new language.
It is.
How has law school been so far?
It was struggle at first. I think that everyone's law school experience is very different. So I feel like we're going to have two very different responses. For me, law school, like, you get dunked in a deep, deep lake and you just gotta swim, and it's like, whoa. Especially the first maybe few weeks, just learning how to read for what professors are looking for, learning even just how your professors operate. And they are kind of all the first few weeks trying to scare you. And it works. It does scare you, you know? The first person who gets a cold call wrong, it's like, oh my gosh, like, is that going to be me? But I think that once you get the hang of law school, it's a lot of reading. It's very formulaic, though. I think you read, you attend classes, you answer questions, you get cold called, and you study for final exams. I think the most jarring part about law school to me was the almost 100% of your grade in most classes is one test. And that part is definitely puts a lot of pressure on you towards the end of the semester, but I actually really like it because I never was super good at keeping up with homework. But I love a test, and so I think that that's been good. But how's your experience?
So I'd always been somebody who did well in school, and I'm sure you were the same way. So when I went to law school, I kind of struggled with not being at the level that I expected of myself, as far as knowing the cases, understanding what was going on in class. I remember so many conversations were just going over my head, and I didn't know what people were talking about, which was jarring. So I was that person that got cold called first. It was in contracts. Very first day, the professor goes, Miss Humphries, can you answer such and such a question? And I was like, so I answered it, and he asked to follow up, and I got the follow up wrong. But the crazy part was he did not cold call anyone else for 3 weeks, and then he cold called me again.
Oh,
no. And I like wasn't super locked into what he was saying because I thought that
you were safe.
I thought I was safe. So luckily I think I was able to call together an answer that worked. But that just kind of sums up my 1L year. Is just like,
that is crazy.
Thinking I'm on track and then I'm not. Since then though, I think you're right. I think it's gotten more formulaic. I've gotten used to how it works. It's also nice that we get to pick our own classes after your first year.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, most first year students who are called 1Ls in the country take the same basic classes that prepare you for the bar, and then you get to choose your classes for the most part for the next 2 years. And that's kind of where we are.
I think it's been that way for a long time. So it creates kind of a bond. You're like, oh, contracts, haha. You know, everyone has the similar experience across the board. And so that's interesting that you can kind of pick up that conversation with really anyone who's been to law school. It's kind of interesting that way.
It is. Yeah, it is.
But yeah, that's a crazy experience. I did not know you got cold called twice. I don't think I've ever been the first one to be cold called in a class. No. But I have gotten an answer wrong, and it was genuinely terrifying.
It is.
Like what you said before, going back to the whole thing of you've been good in school all your life. And then you get to law school and you're like, geez, like I'm not the best in the class right now. That's crazy. Or, you know, I get something wrong, or someone has a better answer than me. Someone's better at cold calling than me. And there was always those kids too who were raising their hand every single question.
I'm like, didn't we read the same stuff? How are they pulling this out? And I didn't.
And I had to kind of like grasp in my head that law school, you know, you're kind of with the people who all succeeded in school. And you're with this group of people, and you're no longer the big fish in the small pond. You just have to kind of eventually manage your own expectations. And you're not maybe going to be the smartest, but
we survived, and everyone survived. We had one with people who were not the best in their class in high school or in college or anything, and they, you know, are rock stars now. So it's, you're right. It's all about figuring out what's best for you and not having expectations going into it.
Exactly.
What is it like being a law clerk?
Wait, I feel like before we get into that question, we should explain how we know each other.
Oh, that's true. Kind of fun. That is relevant.
Yes.
Yeah. Explain.
So, before the very, very first week of law school, they had an orientation, and there was this introductory brunch on the lawn of CU Law. And I sat down next to you, and we just like struck up a conversation.
Hit it off. Yeah, off the bat. It was kind of cool that ended up happening. It was total chance. I mean, I guess we had like one in 180 something odds. We just got to talking about a bunch of stuff.
A long time. I remember
we did
like it had to have been like 45 minutes that they had us just chatting there before they started things.
Well, and I remember being a bit frustrated towards the end of that conversation because I was like, geez, it's hot out here. Like, we need some AC. It was pretty hot out on that lawn.
Okay, so that's how we know each other.
So then you have worked at this firm before. Obviously, your dad, and you worked here in high school. And then whenever I was applying to jobs.
It was one year, and I had you over to my parents' place for a New Year's party, and you got to meet my dad, and then you asked if there were any openings.
Because I think you had mentioned that he had a family law partner, and that's what I'm primarily interested in. So I thought that was super cool. I wanted to work for him, and I did an interview, and after that, just been working here ever since. It's been pretty cool.
So you worked here last summer. The last summer I worked as an intern for several judges in Boulder, and that was really fun. And I kind of went into law school not knowing what I wanted to do, but through that and some other internships and experiences I had, I realized that I wanted to do civil litigation, which is what my dad does. And so I was like, okay, well, if that's what I want to do, I might as well come back to this firm, get to work with my dad, get to work with, you know, these fun people like Reese. It's fun to have a friend there.
It is fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to have someone your age. And that's what I was saying. We've had kind of an influx of girls in the firm, which has been cool. But it's definitely interesting to learn how to be a law clerk. Do you want to talk about your experience getting into that?
It's really interesting because you spend your first year or two just taking classes, and then you actually get a job in the real world. And there are some things that are applicable, but for the most part, I mean, any lawyer will tell you that the practice of law is so different than taking classes.
Law school is very different from the practice of law.
Law school preps you for the bar.
It does, yes.
But not as much.
Not for being a lawyer.
Counseling clients, like how do you email professionally with other people, like all of those sorts of things you kind of have to learn.
Right. I remember one of the barriers when I started being a law clerk was even just learning the system. I didn't know really anything about billing. Didn't know about that. Didn't know I had to start setting timers. That was an interesting learning curve. The whole system, talking to clients. Family law is a whole different beast as well, so that was hard to learn.
What made you decide that you wanted to do family law? Because I remember during our initial conversation even 2 years ago, you were like, I want to do family law.
Yeah. I think I've always gravitated towards people-oriented things. I really love talking to people. I never wanted to be in a type of law where there would be a lot of paperwork involved, but not a lot of client conversations. I think family law kind of strikes that balance between being a lawyer but also being essentially a counselor in a way. That's what I've learned from the attorney I work for. Is it's a lot of one-on-one talking with people. It's obviously an emotional situation, but additionally I have a sister who's adopted from China. So kind of the prospect of, she's actually our moderator. She is. And our office manager.
Yeah,
Yes.
It is me.
But she was adopted from China, and I think, adoption is only a small part of the practice of family law. I've actually only experienced one adoption case since I've been here, but kind of knowing how to do that work and helping has been something that I'm interested in. It would be really cool to help someone adopt a kid someday and get a sister like everyone. Whatever. So I think those are my reasons. What made you want to go into civil litigation?
Yeah, I, same as you, just really love talking to people. I think that's one thing about law that drew me to it is just there's so much conversations with other people, either that work in your firm or your clients or whoever it is, and I love that personal connection you can develop. I really see that in civil litigation, specifically to small firm like we are here now.
Right.
I love that I can feel like I'm involved in my community and helping the people that are here that own businesses, that live in the area. And, you can walk down the street and run into people that you represented or see businesses that you've helped out. And I think that's so cool. I also have, I have 2 degrees. I have an English degree and a business degree. So I feel like civil litigation was sort of the perfect marrying of my business interests and also my love for writing with my English degree, because that just requires so much motions practice and writing and knowing how to craft an argument. I took one class last year where the professor was a judge, and his big thing was civil litigation. It's all about telling a story, and I love that. It's how can I present my client's interest in the best way, in the best story, a true story, but trying to present it in the best way.
Yeah, I think that is a big part of civil litigation. You're weaving a tale throughout, maybe even years of litigation, but you are kind of crafting a narrative and interacting with clients. And it's interesting because I've even heard your dad talk about like just clients around town, and it'll be people or businesses that are about. And it's really interesting to know that you kind of have that close bond with them.
I think a lot of people see lawyers as, there's lawyer jokes and people see them as being mean or stingy.
Oh, yes.
There's bad apples in every profession. But I think the best lawyers, like the ones we work for, like the ones we want to be, are really high IQ and not for selfish reasons, but because they really care about their clients.
You have so much power as an attorney.
You do.
For good or bad. And I like that our firm kind of stands on certain beliefs that are, doing what's right, not money related. Like those kind of values are what I was looking for. I like the interpersonal and the caring about clients on a personal level. They are people and not as much of numbers and business. So I think that's a cool part of being a small firm.
This was fun getting to talk to you a little bit, Reese.
I thought this was really fun.
I learned some things I didn't know about you.
I did too. It's interesting.
Still surprising each other.
We are.
All these years. And to our listeners out there, we hope you enjoyed getting to know us a little bit, and stay tuned. There will be more episodes to come.
Thank y'all.